People who know me probably know that it's no secret that I love Mass Effect, even to the point where I annoy them about it. I even annoy people on the street.
Hi, I like Mass Effect. Fuck off, please.
I have 7 restraining orders. Despite what people know of me, my love for this series was actually a very, very slow burn. It took me a really long time for me to actually start playing Mass Effect. Alright, so my memory might be a little fuzzy on this, but in 2013, 2014 I think, my cousin gave my brother and I his copies of Mass Effect 2 and 3, and then we would go and buy Mass Effect 1 on the Xbox Live Store. As it usually was back then, my brother was the one who got to play it first. At the time I didn't have too much interest, and I did mostly other things whenever he was playing. Eventually he would finish playing the trilogy, and then tried to get me to play it. I tried it, got to the end of the opening section, then put it down for about a year or so, where I tried again, and got to the same point as last time and gave up. This would happen a third time a few months later, but then near the end of 2017, I gave it another go and tried to make it through at least the first game, and I did just that. To be honest, I kind of rushed through it so I could get to Mass Effect 2 sooner, but I ended up having a decent time with it. I think at the time I wasn't too jazzed about playing long and slower games, unless it was Pokemon or something, and Mass Effect 1's slower pace turned me off of it a lot. But since replaying the trilogy, I've come to have an appreciation for longer, slower games. Just saying, back then I wouldn't have even considered playing something like Persona 5 or Witcher 3. As I kept playing the series over and over, I would end up buying all the DLC for 2 and 3, then buying the trilogy on PC, getting all the DLC there, and now I bought the new Legendary Edition remaster, which is the version I'll be playing for this review. I swear I don't have a problem. It's been over a year since I last played Mass Effect 1, and I'm ready for some sci-fi space action. Without further ado, let's get started. Like the last video, I'll provide a spoiler bumper for anyone who wants to skip. The year is 2183, and for 30 years, humanity has lived among other alien species thanks to the scientific breakthrough called Mass Effect. Aboard the Normandy, the crew prepares for a test drive as this is a brand new prototype ship. Things are not as they seem, as the crew questions why a Turian Spectre is aboard. Basically a super elite soldier that's allowed to act as they see fit as long as they don't go against the wishes of the Council, the group at the height of political power in the galaxy. And the Normandy crew is very confused as to why someone like that is here for what's supposed to be a simple test drive. As we approach the destination of Eden Prime, the captain of the ship David Anderson and Spectre Nihilus bring the player character Commander Shepard into the loop. Technically, Shepard doesn't have a first name. It's either John or Jane, or hell, it might even just be Commander, but I decided to be a little bit more creative and picked Jack. Yeah. Anyways, the true purpose of going to Eden Prime is because of reports of the discovery of an ancient Prothean beacon, a race of aliens that died out over 50,000 years ago and left behind data caches that help civilizations, including humanity, advance to the point they're at now. Before arriving, a distress call comes in showing Eden Prime getting attacked by an unknown force, with the giant mysterious ship being the standout detail. With no time to waste, we arrive at the colony and Nihilus goes off on his own to investigate while Shepard, along with Kaidan Alenko and Richard Jenkins, are dropped off at another point. Jenkins, Kaidan, and Shepard run into Gunnery Chief Ashley Williams, the soldier that sent the distress call, and we make our way over to the Prothean beacon. We also discover that the enemies we've been fighting are a race of AI called the Geth, which haven't been seen outside their territory in 300 years. We then cut to Nihilus, who runs into another Spectre named Saren. Nihilus lets his guard down, and Saren doesn't waste a second to kill him. I mean, if there's ever any doubt that he was a bad guy, just look at him, holy shit! Thankfully, there was a guy hiding behind some crates that was able to tell everyone this, and we learn that Saren is after the beacon. The crew misses Saren, but the beacon is left behind, which causes Shepard to have some wacky visions of death and destruction when he comes in contact with it. After recovering, we then need to go report what happened to the Council, and warn them that Saren is now a rogue agent. We arrive at the Citadel, the super cool space station city thing that acts as a central hub where you can do some side quests, get supplies, do the hanky-panky, and punch reporters in the face. We go report to the Council, but they don't believe us. Fuck. So now it's on Shepard to try and find some evidence of Saren being a prick, and thanks to this girl named Tali, we find a recording of Saren talking about his attack on Eden Prime and how they're closer to finding the Conduit and the return of something called the Reapers. No one is sure what the Conduit and the Reapers are, but this is enough evidence to make the Council see Saren as an enemy. Saren is hiding out beyond Council jurisdiction, and to go after him, Shepard is made into the very first human Spectre, as, like I said before, they're allowed to work outside of the rules. With Captain Anderson gifting us the Normandy and the squad by our side, the hunt for Saren begins. This is the part where things get a little open-ended. At first you're given the option to go to either Pharos or Therum. Then, upon clearing one of those, you can then go to Noveria, and then after clearing 2 planets, you're then given the option to go to Virmire. I went to Therum, Pharos, Virmire, then Noveria for this playthrough. Therum is pretty short and simple, and the one you'll probably head to first. It involves you going to find the daughter of Matriarch Benezia, Dr. Liard Tassoni. She ends up joining the party as a way to keep herself safe from Saren, and her knowledge of the Protheans will come in handy. Alright, not really a graceful transition, but I'd like to talk about the characters for a bit since we now have a full party. First up, we got the human party members, Caden and Ashley. I don't know what to really say about Caden other than him being kind of just a guy. He talks a little bit about his training and how he killed his instructor to protect a girl he liked, but was feared rather than being seen as a knight in shining armor. It's interesting, but I wish he had more to say about it. Ashley, well, okay, I don't really like her because she's kind of, sort of very racist, and she just has this grumpy pettiness to her that I find annoying. So yeah, I don't really like her. Alright, next we have Tali'Zorah Naraya. She's a Quarian. And she's the only Quarian you'll see in the entire game, which leads into a slight problem I have with her for this game, where she's kind of an exposition machine that explains every little detail about her species while leaving little room for her to be her own character. And the stuff she says is interesting, as this is how you learn that the Geth were created by the Quarians and were forced to leave their home planet and live on spaceships for 300 years. I mean, she has her moments here and there, but for the most part, she's really just a walking encyclopedia. This also sort of extends to Liara, as she talks a lot about Asari culture and Prothean stuff. She has a bit more character moments than Tali does, as you have to face off against her mother, but it still feels like she dumps a lot of info at you at once. Next up we have my 2 favorite characters, Rex and Garrus. These 2 are actually optional party members, but I will judge you if you decide not to pick up either of them. Rex is a Krogan mercenary that gave up hope on his own race as he felt that they were too stuck in their own ways to band together after the species was inflicted with a sterility plague called Gegenophage that causes 1 in 1,000 Krogan to survive childbirth. He's just kind of along for the ride, and while he does do a lot of info dumping of his species, he's enough of his own character behind what he says to make it not much of a problem. Now we have my favorite character in the series, Garrus Vakarian. He actually doesn't say anything about his own species and talks about his personal philosophies regarding how to get the job done. Before joining the party, he worked on the Citadel as a police officer, but quits to join Shepard as he hated how procedure and rules got in the way of his job. He has a bit of a reckless streak, as he'll prioritize catching criminals rather than protecting civilians. As you talk to him, you can either encourage his behavior to where he says he'll go off on his own by the end of the game, or you can argue against his ideals to make him change his mind, and by the end of the game he'll return to being a police officer. To be honest, this isn't my favorite cast of characters, as I only really like 2 of them, but they're not awful. It's decent enough as an establishment for who these people are and what their deals are. This also extends to the characters beyond the party, like the pilot of the Normandy, Joker. No, not that one. Stop that. He's voiced by Seth Green, and he'll make comments after each mission and is probably one of the more interesting human characters in the series, but I'll have a lot more to say about him and the others in the sequels. Anyways, where was I? Right, next up is Pharos, a human colony under attack from the Geth. There we find a zombie, mind-controlled plant alien thing that uses an Asari as a host to communicate, and... Ooh, a shiny! Anyways, after the plant monster is killed, the Asari host is freed and gives Shepard something called the Cipher. Using her Asari abilities, she's able to reconfigure Shepard's brain so that he can understand the Prothean language and has a better understanding of the vision he received on Eden Prime, which kind of just ends up confirming what Shepard already suspected. The reason why the Protheans died out 50,000 years ago is because they were all wiped out by the Reapers, and Saren is trying to find the conduit so he can bring them back. The next stop is Noveria, which is where Matriarch Benezia is, and after making our way through the thought-to-be-extinct Rachni, we face off against Benezia and her forces. After defeating her, she reveals that she and those that follow Saren are under control of Saren's command ship, Sovereign, which can somehow emit a signal that influences organic beings to follow Saren's will. And after giving us this information, Benezia succumbs to the indoctrination and is put down. Finally, we're headed to Virmire, where we find that Saren has a research facility that experiments the effects of indoctrination, and is close to finding a cure for the Krogan genophage, as Saren plans to use it as a bargaining chip to amass a Krogan army alongside his Geth forces. The plan is for the facility to be blown up via nuke, but Rex is understandably very unhappy with the situation. If you don't have a high enough speechcraft or didn't get his family's armor, you can end up killing him, but if you let that happen again, I will judge you. Meeting either of those 2 requirements, Rex will understand that stopping Saren is much more important. Inside the facility, Shepard runs into another Prothean beacon, which gives him the location of the conduit, and it's on some planet called Ilos. After getting brain blasted, we come into contact with Sovereign itself, revealing itself not only to be an AI but an actual Reaper. And according to Sovereign, their goals are beyond our understanding, and that the cycle of wiping out galactic civilizations has been occurring long before the Protheans. I mean, I've heard of worse ways to spend your time. After this exchange, Sovereign dips and makes his way over to Shepard and the crew. With no time to waste, Ashley gets the nuke prepared, but we run into Saren, and it's here where we learn that he too is just another pawn in Sovereign's plan. There's a brief skirmish, but the nuke is about to go off, and here is where we need to make a difficult choice. Ashley is being overrun by the Geth near the nuke, and Kaidan is being overrun by Geth on a further part of the facility, meaning we can only save one of them. It was a really hard choice for this playthrough, and I spent hours deciding who I would... Well, anyways. Morale is low, but the Normandy is then recalled back to the Citadel by the Council as they plan on preparing a final attack on Saren. But this was all a trick, as the Council plans on reinforcing the Citadel rather than going on the offensive on Ilos, and the Normandy is locked down to prevent Shepard from taking matters into his own hands. Assholes. But thanks to the help of Captain Anderson, we get to do just that anyways and head to Ilos. We land on the planet, but Saren locks the back door the instant we arrive. God damn it! So we find a way to open the door and travel down this long-ass hallway. But we're then stopped by an ancient Prothean VI named Vigil, who just drops a whole lot of info on us all at once. So basically, the Citadel and the mass relays were all built by the Reapers, and the Citadel itself is a mass relay which will allow the Reapers to arrive in an instant without meeting much resistance. However, the few surviving Protheans were able to tamper with the Citadel's mechanisms to basically lock out the Reaper's shortcut. The Conduit is a miniature mass relay built by the Protheans as a backdoor into the Citadel, and Sovereign is using it so he can open the door back up for the rest of the Reapers. With this information, we continue our trek to the Conduit, and somehow Saren just made it there considering how long the talk with Vigil was. We use the Conduit and make it back to the Citadel where everything is going to shit. Sovereign is tearing through the whole Citadel fleet while Saren heads to the control tower, and we gotta walk the whole way because the slow-ass elevators finally gave out. We basically exterminate all of the Geth and arrive at the control room to have one last showdown with Saren. After managing to knock him off his space skateboard, he finally dies. However, that still leaves Sovereign, and he's beating the shit out of the Citadel forces. Being in the control room, we're able to make way for the human fleets to provide backup and save the Council at the expense of a lot of human forces, or you can focus all your fire on Sovereign, which will spare a lot of human lives but will cost the lives of the Council. I chose to save the Council because it's going to come around in my favor for Mass Effect 3. As a last-ditch effort, Sovereign takes full control of Saren's corpse and attacks us. He can't seem to stand still, but is eventually taken down, which overloads Sovereign, allowing the Normandy to fire off a killing blow right down the middle. The day is saved, and humanity is offered a seat on the Council for their efforts. And I chose Anderson to be the Counselor because Udina can eat my ass. This is in the end, however, as Sovereign has his buddies hanging out in dark space, and they'll be on their way sooner or later, and the only way to stop them is to band together for the coming storm. And yeah, that's the end of Mass Effect. A pretty straightforward story, honestly. And I feel like this was done intentionally to highlight the selling point of this game, which was the whole making impactful decisions during the adventure. Like choosing which of your teammates lives on Virmire, deciding to stick your neck out for the Council, deciding Rex's fate, and many more. You can also choose who you want as a romantic partner, but in my case, Ashley is dead and I don't really find Liara that interesting. So, I'm a virgin. I thought video games were supposed to be an escape from reality. I really like being able to choose your backstory for Shepard. It helps you build your own personality for them and helps you decide whether or not you want to be a paragon of justice or a racist asshole renegade. Yeah, this game doesn't really have a good or evil type of morality system. Well, racism is evil, but both Paragon and Renegade Shepard want to save the day and stop the Reapers. It's just a matter of how it's done and how big of a dick you are. As for the quality of the story itself, it's alright. Like I said, it's fairly straightforward and fundamental with a really cool setting. Structurally, Mass Effect 1 shares a lot of similarities with KOTOR, as I said earlier. You got your opening part where shit goes down, you get a super important promotion, you go to 4 planets and do 4 things in whatever order you want, then having one last big battle on a giant space station. Though I think Mass Effect does this better than KOTOR because what you do on each planet feels more important than whatever happens in KOTOR's worlds. I don't really have any huge complaints about the story except for my issues with the Council. It got annoying how they push back on everything you did and every choice you made. I think the weirdest example is the Rachni Queen, where you can either spare or kill her. The Council will disapprove of your actions no matter what you choose. They disapprove of you bringing Liara on board, they disapprove of you killing the Thorian, and they disapprove of nuking Virmire. Well, okay, that one kind of makes sense. They really get on your nerves, and I guess it was intentional, as the writers may have wanted to test your patience and see if you'd ultimately make the right decision when it was time to save or let them die. I mean, I get it, but there's only so much headassery I can take. Another thing is Saren. I feel like we don't get to see much of him as his own character. Most of what we know about him is what Anderson tells us, because when we first see him, he's kind of just an asshole, and it just persists throughout the game. I do kind of like his motivations for joining Sovereign. He's out for himself and sees that it's hopeless to stand against the Reapers. I just think his introduction was a little underwhelming, and it doesn't help that we don't interact with him much until near the end. If I had to pick my favorite moments in this game, I'd choose the meeting with Sovereign. His booming voice just makes my speakers almost shake, and the stuff he says is just so intimidating. I also really like the meeting with Vigil, and I really love how the title theme plays to emphasize the mystique and the hope that it brings for the heroes. And finally, I absolutely love the moment Sovereign is killed. The triumphant soundtrack that plays just gives me chills every single time. While I don't find this story to be anything too stellar, it's definitely not bad either. I think that what this game excels at is world building. I love the lore to this game, and you can spend hours reading these codex entries that tell you so much about alien cultures, technologies, or how Medigel, the stuff that you use to heal in game, should be illegal but is too useful to society to make it so. Or how this is one of the only sci-fi universes that I know of that actually has artificial intelligence banned, with the creation of the Geth being a prime example of why, because, shocker, AIs revolt against their creators 90% of the time in media. This game does a great job at establishing what will be focused on more in later entries by letting you know who certain people and what certain things are. Although it can be a little awkward because when asking people in-game, Shepard comes across as if they've never heard of anything, but it's whatever. It's hard to talk about the presentation of the original game since this is a remaster, but what they did to Mass Effect 1 was great. The original game looked pretty good for 2007 standards, but the characters all kinda looked like potatoes, and the frame rate was really bad, especially during heavy action. The upgrade is very much welcome. However, I don't know if it's just me, but I think some of the sound mixing took a shot. Like, the music and voice acting are all really well done, but I swear sometimes characters sound like they're 5 miles away, especially Garrus when you're talking to him on the ship. Now, I'm not sure if this is just me misremembering how it was on the original, because it's been over a year since I played. For the visual things that didn't change was the stiff-looking conversations where, like KOTOR, a lot of just standing still, arms to sides, with very basic camera angles. When things do get more cinematic, it looks really good. It's just that you're looking at the coma-inducing conversations for most of the adventure. The remaster was also a very much needed upgrade for the gameplay. They're very small changes, but together they make this version the version to play. For one thing, they made the weapons feel like they actually have an impact. The addition of hit markers helps, as well as the sound design. In the original, the guns always sounded sort of muffled, and I was caught off guard when I used a sniper rifle for the first time. Speaking of snipers, they made them not dog shit in the remaster. In the original, when you aim down sights, you're looking at this, as if Shepard has noodle arms and can barely hold it upright. Now with the remaster, I can actually use them comfortably, and I chose Infiltrator as my class because of this change. When starting the game, you choose one of 6 classes, though there are 3 primary ones and the other 3 are combinations of the other 3. These classes will tell you what weapon specializations you'll have, as well as the different skills you'll be learning upon leveling up. And you level up like really fucking fast. So fast that the remaster added an option to rework the level up system, in which it cuts the number of levels in half, but keeps the same amount of skill points you'll receive, and it just gives it a better pace. I did the original style as it's just what I'm used to, but it feels like I'm opening the squad page 4 times every hour. For any class, you can use any weapon, but you won't be able to level up certain ones unless you pick Soldier. Like Infiltrator is good with pistols and snipers, so it's good to mainly use only those weapons. At least until you get to the tail end of the game where you get higher level weapons and they all basically just become powerful sniper rifles with good cooldown. Even shotguns. Okay. And guns aren't everything, as you'll need to utilize skills to wipe out your opposition. Using skills will put you into this tactical mode where time freezes and you can assess the situation and determine what the best strategy is. You can also tell your teammates what skills they use as well, assuming that they didn't just automatically use all of them the instant you enter combat, which thankfully you can set it to manual if it really bothers you. Also, they might not use any skills at all because they got stuck on something because the pathfinding for your squad is really wonky, and I swear I didn't have this problem in the original. Look at that. I almost died because Rex and Garrus were too busy not giving a shit. The party has their uses, and they can cover any shortcomings Shepard may have. Like for me, I don't have any biotic abilities, so having Liara hilariously create ragdolls with her singularity ability lets me pick off enemies one by one. And having someone with high skills in electronics and decryption is helpful for opening locked boxes, which has you playing this minigame puzzle, or you can just bypass it with Omnigel. You can get Omnigel by scrapping equipment, and this and selling items is the best way to circumvent the issue of overflow. In the original game, your item limit was 150, and for the remaster, it was doubled to 300, and you get a lot of items everywhere you look, and even get some after battle. One of the worst things about the original was finding items but having a full inventory, because it would force you to scrap the items you just found instead of, leaving them in the box you found them in, or letting you scrap other items to make room for the new ones. And you can't do it in bulk either, you gotta do that shit one at a time. I don't know if this is still an issue in the remaster because I never had a full inventory. I came close, but I knew to start selling my weaker gear to avoid the issue. Going back to the topic of party skills, it's also good to have a high electronics skill because it'll help you out when driving the Mako, this moon buggy tank thingy. This was another thing that they improved for the remaster, as in the original, the controls felt like your 5-year-old brother playing with a Hot Wheels car. It's still a little wacky in the remaster, but at least now it feels like it actually has some weight, and I don't go flying whenever I hit a bump. Usually. You can't upgrade the Mako, except for how much you're able to repair for each use, so you're stuck with the machine gun and this powerful cannon, which the remaster improved by giving you a reticle when you aim down sights. The improvements the remaster brought to the Mako are very, very welcome, but I'll miss the shitposty nature of the original. You'll mainly be using the Mako for side quests, and there are plenty to go around. They'll usually have you driving to a certain spot, then going inside an enemy base, clearing it out, then getting a text blurb of a thing happening. All the mini dungeon areas are also identical to each other. The underground base will always have the same layout, the ship is always the same, the buildings are always the same. The only difference are how the boxes are laid out and which doors are and aren't locked. I kinda wish that they had like 3 different building types, but it's whatever, I guess. Mass Effect also has a couple of DLC adventures, one of which was the Bring Down the Sky DLC, in which you stopped a meteor from crashing onto a planet caused by a new alien race called the Batarians. It's short and sweet, and completing it you get some of the best armor in the game. The other bit of DLC was the Pinnacle Station. Now, I've never actually played this one, and the remaster actually had to cut it because the source code was corrupted. And from what I've seen and heard, it's essentially a battle arena minigame sort of thing. And from what others have said, it's not very good, as Mass Effect 1's combat doesn't lend itself too well to an arcade battle mode, so I guess we're not really missing much. I think overall that the gameplay is good, just with a few hiccups, and the remaster does its best to iron out all the jankiness, but just leaving a few problems here and there. The remaster also improved button mapping for controllers, because in the original, the select button was grenade, and that's just not right. Also, if you wanted to take cover, you had to push the control stick up against a wall. Now you can just push the A button. And for melee, you had to get up close to an enemy and fire your weapon, making things hell awkward. Now the B button is melee. I don't think it's all that useful of an attack, but at least you won't accidentally punch enemies that are trying to give you a hug. Mass Effect is a really good game now thanks to the remaster, and I say you should always start with this game if you're trying to get into the series, as by Mass Effect 3 it'll be a more fulfilling experience than just starting with 2 or 3. I think the variety in building your Shepard is great and adds a whole lot of replay value, and this goes for the whole series too. In fact, after I play the trilogy for this series of videos, I want to do a Vanguard female Shepard playthrough. I really like the tactical pausing when using skills, as it lets me set 2 or 3 overloads on one enemy, making them see heaven, or robot heaven in a microsecond. I know that people have had complaints about some of the technical aspects regarding the PC version, but I'm too much of a monkey brain to understand what exactly they're talking about. I just play video game and consume media. Now, I know I have been too nice to this game, especially regarding the story, and it may surprise some of you given that I can't shut the fuck up about this series. This wasn't the game that made me invested, and by the end of my first playthrough back in 2017, I wasn't fully sold on Mass Effect as a whole. I go back to this game fairly often and have a good time, but I definitely revisit 2 and 3 much more frequently. Mass Effect just has a feeling that I've grown to love. I'll get into it more when I get to the Mass Effect 3 video, but the first game developed a world that I love and know so much, maybe too much, and I just can't get enough. With that said, I'll catch you guys next time for Mass Effect 2. Thanks for watching.